those for?
What do you mean? My glasses?
Yeah.
Well, they help me to focus on Jesus. David told us
Oh.
last week to help us focus on Jesus. So I thought I'd give it a go.
Great. How long have you been wearing them?
So now about 3.5 days.
Excellent. And they're helping you focus?
Well, I mean, they do remind me to focus on Jesus, but I can't really focus on much else. So, and I'm getting quite self-conscious now, so I'm going to take them off.
Okay.
Is that all right?
Yeah, you can take them off. That's fine. It was really exciting, wasn't it, on Sunday to hear about how if we trust Jesus, then we are raised with Christ. We're alive with him, and our lives are hidden in Christ. Yeah. It was cool, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was awesome. I have to say that I'm still not 100% sure about what that means.
Like the hidden in Christ bit.
Yeah.
Now, I've got a mug here. I'm drinking some tea, and I've got some chocolate. I was eating some chocolate, fairly standard for me. If I hide the chocolate in the mug, and then I put the mug like under the table, where's the chocolate?
Under the table.
Yeah, and here's my mug, still with the chocolate hidden. And if I put it behind the cushion, where's the chocolate?
Behind the cushion.
Yeah, and here, and then I know this is a bit daft, but if my mug were in heaven, then where would the chocolate be?
In heaven?
Yeah, that's right. So because we're hidden, like the chocolate's hidden in the mug, if we're hidden in Christ and he's in heaven, so we're in heaven too. What it means, and it also means because he's alive forever in heaven, then we're alive too forever. Like it's guaranteed if we're united to Christ, if we're hidden in him, that if he lives, we live. Yeah.
Awesome. So, okay, if we're hidden in Christ, Christ is in heaven.
Yeah.
So it's as though we're there as well.
Yeah, precisely. And so Paul's saying in this bit of Colossians that therefore we're supposed to set our minds, so like how we feel and what we love, and our minds, so what we think, on Jesus, specifically on Jesus, who's sitting on the throne ruling.
Right. Yeah. It sounds a bit unrealistic though, isn't it? Because my heart and my mind, they're often on all sorts of other things, like my work, whether it's going to stop raining, which it is at the moment, when I'm next going to see my mates so I can play football, what I'm going to cook my girls for tea. It's all those things day to day.
Well, yeah, so Paul's point is that while we're doing all of these normal things, that our focus should be on Jesus, and we should remember that we're united to him. So we're supposed to live as if we're already in heaven.
Okay, so living now as though we're in heaven.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds really cool, but it does sound really hard.
Yeah.
Because the world isn't really heaven.
No.
So, I mean, how do we do that? How do we live day to day in the world where it's really, really hard, as though we're living in heaven, which is perfect?
Well, Paul talks about setting our minds and things above, and then he talks about taking off the old self and putting on the new. And since we're thinking about putting off and putting on, I thought I'd set some of the
Okay, great. I mean, that was pretty cool. But, I mean, this isn't really about taking off and putting on jumpers, is it?
No, I just thought it'd be funny to get them to do it. Yeah.
Okay, but so what do we take off? What do we put off?
Well, we're going to hear from Cal and Michelle and Leanne, and they're going to tell us some of the examples that Paul talks about what we put off.
Ace.
Paul tells us to put to death greed. Greed is more than just wanting something nice. God is a good God who gives us really good things. Greed is when we set our hearts and minds on something that isn't ours or that we don't deserve, and the problem with it is that greed brings on God's wrath or anger. Greed is deadly, so Paul tells us to put it to death instead. So I suppose putting greed to death means when we want something we don't need or deserve, like more than 30p allowance of tuck on a normal Friday night, we might try and remember instead how God has given us everything by uniting us to Christ. We set our mind on things above, not on tuck. Someone in heaven doesn't get greedy for more tuck because they've already got everything, because they've got Christ. Because I'm united to Christ, I have everything too. In heaven, I won't be greedy for more tuck. So I'll try and behave like that now and put greed to death.
Did you hear that rumour about Jess? She's going to get rid of all the tuck at church because she doesn't want you to have any. Don't worry, that's not actually true. But sometimes gossip can feel fun, can be a way of having a laugh with your friends. But actually, talking about people behind their back is something that belongs to our old life before we were raised with Christ. Paul tells us to get rid of simple things that we might say, like slander or gossip. If we set our minds on things above, we've no reason to gossip. Gossip is normally about putting other people down so that you feel better about yourself. But actually, if we're hidden in Christ and looking forward to glory, there quite literally isn't anything better to have or to look forward to. If you gossip, it's like you've forgotten that your life is hidden with Christ. It's like you've forgotten that Christ has died for you. Living like we're already in heaven means getting rid of things like gossip. So, will you join me in getting rid of gossip?
Paul's last instruction is to not lie to one another, and his reason is that we have put on the new person we are in Christ. God is changing that new person to become more like Jesus, and so it just doesn't make sense to go back and to live in the old way. Imagine you're a homeless person living on the streets and you had to rely on going through food bins just to eat. It'd be crazy though, wouldn't it, if someone came along and gave you a house filled with a full fridge with enough money to live for a month. Wouldn't it be crazy to go back to the old way of going through the bins and eating that food? That's how crazy it is to lie. When we're being made like Jesus, who is entirely 100% truthful. If our minds are set on things above, on Jesus, we just won't lie to one another.
Okay, so great. I mean, there's some of the things we're supposed to put off because we've been raised with Christ and our lives are hidden with him in heaven.
Yeah.
But, and this is what I spend a bit of time thinking about, what if I can't do that very well? What if I mess up? What if I fail?
Well, actually, you will fail. It doesn't mean like you won't get it right all the time. You won't put off all the bad stuff or the sinful behaviour, and I don't either. But that doesn't mean that you don't go to heaven. This is the wonderful news of the gospel, that if you trust in Jesus' death and resurrection, you have died, you have risen with him, and your life is hidden with him. And nothing can change that. So if you're hidden in Christ, he is alive in heaven, and you'll be alive in heaven too, whether you fail or not. So like Paul tells us that it's like we're to live like this, not so that we can be saved, not so that we can be united to Christ, but because we're united to Christ, that he tells us to put off the old and put on the new.
Okay, so it's because we're united in Christ that we can put things off and put on them. Yeah. Okay. But there's this verse at the end of the passage, verse 11. What does Paul mean at the end of this passage about there being no Gentile or Jew?
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? Verse 11. So I think he's saying that the most defining thing about a group of Christians is that they have Christ in them. So you might have a group of people who are rich or poor or tall or love football or love sewing or short, old, young, Welsh, English, Jamaican, whatever. But if Christ is in them, then that's the thing that defines them. So not anything else. And his point is that this identity, that we're united to Christ, is what fuels our behaviour and not anything else. So if we're raised with Christ, we set our minds on things above and we put off our earthly nature and we try to live as we will be in heaven.
Okay. That's really great, Jess. Thanks for that. I think that really helps. Maybe some of the things we can chat about in our Zoom call on Sunday would be how we can keep our hearts and minds set on Jesus.
Yeah. Great.
What does it mean to live as if we're in heaven already?
Yeah.
And what's quite difficult.
Yeah.
And yeah, maybe what things from Paul's list do we find hardest to put to death or to get rid of?
Yeah.
Does that sound like some good things to chat about?
They would be great things to chat about. I'll see you then.
Awesome. Cheers, Jess.
Bye.